Oh, give me land, lots of land under starry skies above. Don't fence me in. Let me ride through the wide open spaces that I love. Don't fence me in. I want to be by myself in the evening breeze. Listen to the murmur of the cottonwood trees. Send me out forever, but I ask you please, don't fence me in.
This is Marcy Stamper, and I'm here with Betty Wagoner. Wanted to thank K-Root for making their studios available for this recording, and also Methow at Home for providing a platform for us to share stories about interesting people in the community. Welcome, Betty.
Hello there.
So I thought it'd be interesting to start with just kind of an overview of your long life, you know, where you started out, some of the highlights. And
All righty. My maiden name was Wilhelm, and some of the locals will all remember that. I was born in Brewster, and my dad was the deputy there, and then he decided he wanted to go to farming. And we moved up the Twist River when I was 2.5.
was it a big family?
No, I was the only one in my family.
Oh.
Some of the anecdotes that I really remember, we were out in the field haying, and this people drove up on the road and got out of their car of some kind, and they were yelling at everybody's so happy because World War II just got over. So
Wow.
yeah.
That'll be interesting to learn some more about later.
Yeah.
But you said your father was a deputy, so
He was the
police
town
officer.
marshal.
So he had no experience farming before that? But
No, just when he was raised at home. He came from North Carolina.
Okay. And had he been in this area a long time, or?
No.
Oh.
No, just maybe a year or two.
Okay. So he moved up to Twist River thinking
No.
you would...
Then we moved up to Twist River, yeah.
And wanted to farm...
It was a little ranch.
So cattle,
pigs, horses, chickens, garden, anything to produce food.
For you and the animals.
Hay. Yeah, and hay. And it was quite a undertaking for my folks to try to make the living up there. They milked milk cows and sold the cream to the dairy in Twisp, and was our income for I don't know how many years.
Wow.
For the whole year. And then my mother and dad, they had the animals, and they butchered, and she canned a lot, and she harvested a lot and put things out in the old root cellar that we all used to love to go get. She'd say, Betty, go get so-and-so out of the root cellar. And it was always not a great fun job.
Why were there?
Well, it was dark in there and musty.
You were afraid weird little critters living there? So your family moved up Twist River, and you were farming, and then you were going to school in town? Did you live up Twist River
We
the
lived
whole
up the
time?
Twist River 6.5 miles, and I remember the bus very distinctly. It had benches on it to sit instead of like the seats nowadays. But as I say, I went all 12 years in Twisp. When I was in the 5th grade, we moved to town, and my dad worked over at the lumber yard.
And then after you graduated from high school, what did you do? Did you get a job right away?
I actually went over to Seattle and went one course, six months course on office machines and that sort of thing, and graduated from that and headed right back to Twisp.
And did you get a job?
I got a job
office?
from it was the conservation office here. So helped develop farm plans for them. And
So you worked at that job for a while, but I know you also worked for some
I worked at,
fruit packing sheds and...
first, I worked for Dr. Henry for quite a few years as a receptionist at the medical center, and got involved in the forming of the Methow ambulance company. And then I switched over to packing apples down in Pateras, and we drove it every day, and we carpooled, some of us ladies, and we worked maybe 6 months of the year, but kind of strung out because that's when CA just went in. When I was not working that, I applied at OK's Cascade for fire camp cook, or wherever they wanted to put me.
So I believe you said you also lived in Pateros for about 30
Yes.
years. So but there was a phase where you were commuting to your job down there.
Yeah, when we were up here, and then my husband was transferred from the commercial bank of Twisp down to Pateros, and he was made the manager down there.
Okay, so you're working these jobs in Twisp, and were you married at that point, or?
Yes, I had met Bill Wagoner. Actually, I met him when I was like I think a senior in high school. I was working over at Jack's Variety, and he was over at Club Cafe, and I met him then. And we dated for about 2 years, I guess, and then he made the mistake of asking me to join up with him, and we had 53 years of marriage.
Doesn't sound like a terrible mistake.
The good part of it was he let me go do what I wanted to.
And so for the first part of your marriage, you were living in Twisp.
Correct.
And then at some point you moved down to Pateros, you said?
Yes. And, and in the meantime, I had 2 children, Dan and Jill, and they went to school then it was the Twisp Elementary School, and then they consolidated and made it the Methow Valley School. And when my daughter was 8th grade, that's when we moved to Pateras. My son was 2 years older.
So was that a big change, living in Pateros, or?
It was a pretty much of a country town too.
Yeah,
it's just because it was on the water. We maybe had a few more water activities to do, but basically it was just you knew everybody and everybody was friendly, and I was able to continue on my sports that I like to do.
And so how long did you live in Pateros?
32 years.
Wow. And then you decided to move back to the Methow.
My husband, after he retired from the bank there, he worked for Nordang's Trucking, delivering. And we moved back. He delivered from our town in Pateros. They would just meet the truck coming in. He did that for like 30 years.
Wow.
And then he got Parkinson's, and it did a number on his body. So he passed away in 2010. And I immediately decided I wanted to move back to the Methow Valley because that's where my heart was. And I had a horse and a snowmobile, and this is the country for that.
So maybe we could focus a bit on what you remember from when you were young and growing up on the farm. Your parents just basically raised everything you needed and managed to make a little money just from
on
the cream
check. Times were tough. My mother canned everything, and I got roped into helping her, and that wasn't my thing. But she put that all together that we could survive on the food part.
And did you learn to ride horses to help with herding the cattle, or?
I learned to ride before I was going to school, just around the farm. And then when I started going to grade school, I would take the bus to school every day and come back, and my job was to get on old Nell, the horse, and go get the cows in so they could be milked. And old Nell was so barn sour, meaning she didn't want to leave the place, that my mother had to get a switch and switch her backside to get her to go out on the hill so I could go find the cows. She would get the switch, and up the little road we'd go, and she'd be a switch until the horse would go.
And that happened every afternoon.
Just pretty much when I was younger. Then my aunt and uncle and my cousins moved down the road from us. And then my older cousin, Lee Cave, worked for my dad. And so then he took over the job of finding the milk cows every night. His ability to run, because he went off to college and was on the college team, running all over those mountains for my dad, is why he got that experience of running.
So he would bring the cows in on foot, not by horse?
Correct. He just wanted to run.
Wow.
And when Lee would get through working for my dad, he'd float down the water ditch that would go take water to their place, singing Wabash Cannonball, the top of his lungs, going down through the flume there. We all remember that.
And so at that point, were you able to ride just for fun, or?
Oh, yeah. Definitely I was on a horse every chance I got.
And then I think you said at some point your family left the farm and moved into town. How old were you then?
Okay, I was in the 5th grade when we moved to town, and my dad then went to work for Wiles Coleman Lumber then, and then it went to Wagoner Lumber Company. We lived in a house and was building the house we moved to, and I took my horse, Queenie, which I forgot to tell. He bought 2 horses from the Forest Service that had been, after they were so old, the Forest Service put them out for bid. So then I was able to get Queenie, and we moved to town, and it was like 6.5 miles, and I remember leading her all the way. Well, I must have ridden her part of the way and brought her to town myself.
Oh, really?
And then we'd stake out. It was alfalfa fields down there. It's all kind of that flat across from Hank's Market now. That's where every day I'd move her until the winter, and then had a little lean-to thing to feed her in the winter. So I didn't give up the horse.
Oh, that's nice that you were still able to keep her.
I had the good fortune when I was almost 16 that my dad had a Willys Jeep. I think it was a 45 then, or 46. And I was able to drive that, and I think probably before I turned 16 and then after I turned 16. And so I was the main person with transportation for my friends, and they would all put up 50 cents each, and we'd fill that gas tank up, and we'd run a week on 50 cents each person. My classmates still remember the Jeep. And then I went to high school at TWISP and graduated in 1955 and had gone all 12 years here.
So it sounds like just that 6 months in Seattle where you've been out of this area, right?
Correct. It was either Pateros or TWISP.
Yeah.
The whole time
So what was it like being in a relatively big city at that point?
Well, I couldn't wait to get through my course and get back home, get back over to the country here.
Yeah.
So
had your family, did they ever go over to Seattle
no.
before that? So this was really
it was really
kind of a shock to you.
Some friends of Jack and Dolores Abrams lived over there, and they cordially invited me to live with them.
Oh.
And that's a good thing because I didn't know anything about city life. Edison Technical School's where I went.
And then when you came back here...
I came back here, the Conservation District was hiring a secretary, I guess you call them, And I applied and got that job. And then I helped do farm plans with them. And then I went to work for Dr. Henry, and I worked a total of probably 12 years for him during the time when we just started the Methow Rescue Service, and I was one of the helpers on that.
So can you tell me a bit more about getting that started? And
before they started that, the town worker, Clyde Jewell, had a city car, and Dr. Henry would call for him to bring that up, and whoever they were trying to get transported to the hospital, they'd send them with Clyde in that car. It was not good. There was no medical.
It's just a regular car.
Just a regular car. There was quite a need for an ambulance company.
And did you help with setting it up?
I helped set it up, and then I was the receptionist out front. There was a lot of emergency things when I worked for Dr. Henry. Just anything imaginable out, injuries especially.
And did you sometimes go out with him to?
Not very often, but I remembered that he thought all of his employees for the ambulance company ought to know how to scale a mountain, on a rope. And we had a session, and I went a little ways, and I come back, and I said, if I have to quit, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to do this scaling the mountain thing. I just did not like that. Yep. So.
And then you were working in the fruit sheds, or you worked?
Yeah, after and let's see, I had my children while I was working for Dr. Henry, I guess. He had a nurse, Eileen Waymeyer, that was just like his second hand for years. And when I went into labor, she went down to the hospital with me. And then when I had my daughter, I went to work apple packing in Pateras. And we had a carpool, and us gals would go down every day. It paid, what I thought was really good at that time, and we only worked about 6 months of the year off and on, so then I had the other part of the 6 months off. So, and then I went to work for O'Kay's Cascade on my time off from packing apples. When we would be down, I'd go apply at the fire office of O'Kay's Cascade, and was put in the kitchen just as one of the helpers in the kitchen. And man, we just went on a lot of fires.
Well, you've certainly done a lot of different work.
And definitely had time in between to go take pack trips back in the mountains and drive my Jeep places. And that's must have been why I didn't want to work full time. I wanted to be able to play.
So you would take pack trips. Did your family go, or you went with friends? Or?
Mainly after the hunting experiences with my dad, we moved to town, and he didn't do that anymore. And then we gathered up of whoever wanted to go, and we'd round up enough horses, and off we'd go. So, and did that, I would say, 10 years or so after I was married in 1957. And some of us friends would head out.
So your husband wasn't interested in that? He didn't usually go?
No, he was a golfer. He liked to golf, and he liked artists. He had done quite a few paintings, and he had hoped when he retired to do more, and that's just when he got Parkinson's and wasn't able to.
I know in some of your history that I was reading, it sounds like you've helped start quite a number of things, like the Backcountry Horsemen here.
Yes.
Part of what you got going.
34 years ago this year, I had a ride down in Pateras up on the hill. Had 100 people come, and that was just something, and fed them barbecue beef up on the hill, and that was the start of the Methow Valley Spring Trail Ride. And then I took that as seed money and went ahead and did the application and got us a chapter then. And I've been involved just almost every office since then.
And so how did it change things having a chapter here? Was it just that you could have more organized
Well,
events, or
the thing it was, we could get some trail work done because that is a volunteer organization, and that we spend a lot of time out on trails. That was the main incentive.
So you've helped clear trails each year?
Oh, yes.
Do you still do that?
No, I give that one
That
up.
is really hard work.
But I still go on the work parties sometimes that are just local.
And you would go all over the mountains to...
Yes, up the Twist River, and then the Lake Chelan Sawtooth we went, and the Pasayten Wilderness. We went up there quite a bit. Just absolutely loved it.
And so today when you go riding, it's just for fun?
When I go riding today, it's just pleasure riding. Just, we load up in the morning and go out to where we're going to go for a ride, and then go for the ride and come back and haul back home. Oh, I guess I haven't told you about the snowmobiling.
Right. So that's another of your passions.
Yes.
Right?
So in 1968, I remember this very distinctly, that my friend Wally and Lucy Stewart had 2 Skidoo snowmobiles, and they loaned me one of them for 2 years. And I remember the first time going up to the butte of Black Pine. It was so scary going across the slide. And now, you just put your weight over and go. But in 1970 then, must have been Christmas or my birthday or something, my husband bought me a brand new Yamaha.
When your friends lent you the Skidoo, that was the first time you'd ever been on a snowmobile? Or?
Yeah, in 68 was the first time I'd been, and then I had my own in 70.
So you loved it immediately?
Yep. It's just this thing of getting out in the fresh air and just outside.
And did you help start the Snowmobile Association?
No,
also, or
I just joined on that one. Okay. Well, I helped start the Tri Rivers one down in Brewster and Pateros and Bridgeport. I helped start that one. But this one up here, the Methow Valley one, was already going. And so another thing I forgot to mention was my mother, Marion Wilhelm, is the one that started the Senior Citizen Center in Twisp. She got all the paperwork and found that she could rent the annex off of the big old school there, and she was the main person, got it all started and set up.
So it sounds like maybe you got introduced to the idea of people just thinking, boy, this community could benefit from this particular thing, and rather than waiting for somebody else to do something about it, you just figured, let's start it. Yeah, my mother, and I remember was a supporter, of it, and tried to help some, but she was the main, then when she started, she was the cook and everything. Oh, and really? It's just progressed. It's still, going this date. So you mean you helped with that a bit? I don't know if I helped as much as just supported her, on anything she tried, she was doing to make sure it could happen for her. And that she was so into that, doing for the seniors. And I'm right back doing volunteer work for the seniors now myself. Yeah. We have a Western sale, we call it, that working on right now. They say Western boots and Western shirts and different things that come into the thrift store, and then we pack them all up, and then for the Western sale, then we get them out and sell them and call it the Western sale. So I still am involved at the seniors. It always amazed me well, for the things they sell, which are always an incredible bargain, the amount of money they raise to donate
It
to
is
good causes and give scholarships.
scholarships and
Yeah,
and they fund all their own insurance and all of that.
yeah.
So, thing that the whole community really enjoys, most everybody, the thrift store part.
Yeah. Well, obviously you've done so many different things, but I'm sort of curious about a few of the things you mentioned, just from what it was like growing up on a farm up Twist River. Did you have electricity?
We got
there?
electricity when I was up there.
Uh-huh. And otherwise, how did you get news up there?
We did get a telephone eventually, and our ring was 3 longs and 1 short. And
So it was a party line.
party line, and you could listen in to everybody else.
And did people do that?
Oh, yes. It was called, ours was 3 longs and 1 short.
So you didn't have running water or anything?
We had
You
a running water in the faucet in the kitchen that came from a spring.
So you didn't have hot running water?
They had hot water when the cook stove had a reservoir on it, and my mother would fill pitchers and put this water in this reservoir. And then when the fire was going and the stove was hot, it would warm the water for us.
Huh.
And that's
So-
how we took baths too. We'd warm the water in the reservoir.
And she cooked on the wood stove
Wood
even in
stove.
the summer.
Yep. Boy, sometimes it'd be so hot in there.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah. Definitely remember that part. Because there
And-
wasn't any, air conditioner or anything like that then. One of the times that my dad got so mad at me, my job was to drive the team and pull the hay wagon when he was putting the hay up with pitchforks up on the load. And I turned the team too short and dumped the whole load. And oh my goodness, was I in trouble. After he'd put it all up there by hand, they did.
But you must have still been quite young when you were driving it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like not even 5th grade.
Well, it had to have been before 5th grade,
Right.
yeah.
So,
But I still wasn't supposed to turn the team too short.
yeah, but
Tip the wagon.
where you lived, that house is not there anymore? Is
No,
that what-
it's 6.5 miles up the Twist River, right on a real sharp corner, and our house was just right up above the sharp corner on a little flat there looking down on the road. And people have built a new house back there now, but the reason my folks sold is that they were trying to figure out the route of the North Cascades Highway, where it was going to go, and speculators thought it was going to go up the Twist River, and so that's who bought our place.
Oh.
And then it, of course, went up Mazama way. But I have a good friend, Julie Johnson, and she posts quite a bit of what we do on Facebook. And people are always saying, gee, I wish I could do that. And we just look at each other and say, you're as able to do it as we are. We just make sure we do it, instead of just saying we wish we could.
You have one horse now?
1 horse now, right.
Do you still do overnight horse trips?
Oh, yes. I haven't actually packed in for a couple of years here. The last time we went, my mother and my friend Julie and another couple people, we hired Steve Darwood's worker to pack us in, and then he came and got us in and brought us out. So my daughter said she was not going to be in charge of the pack horse. We were going to hire a pack horse.
So your daughter, though, is also
Oh,
an
yes.
avid
Oh,
horseback
yes.
rider.
She came up through the junior rodeo era, and then she went into high school rodeo, and then she went on in college rodeoed. So
Right. So you never did rodeo.
I was the transporter. I was the cheering section. Maybe sometimes too loud. But
And did your son ride too?
no, he was into motorcycles more. He liked the motorcycle thing. Well, he had a little Shetland pony there for a while that he rode when we went to the high country. And one time he was off walking up the hills. And we said, well, why are you walking? He said, I feel sorry for the pony. I'm going to walk and lead him up the hills. And that was the last. He went to a little motorbike after that.
Sounds like everyone in your family like to get out and explore.
Right. I just have done a lot of fun things. You know, maybe other people think they're work, but I've just done a lot of different things.
So what things that do you think are fun that other people think are work?
Well, you know, taking care of the horse and going riding and loading and all of that. And then the snowmobiles, you got to load and gas them and all of that. But that's where I have my fun. I have really good friends that invite me and help me.
Gosh, I'm just impressed and intrigued by all the different things you've done and kind of these amazing stories. And I'll bet you have a lot more. Maybe we can get together again and you can tell us some more.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's some of the main fun things or the
Yeah.
funny things that I forgot.
Well, I really want to thank you, Betty, for taking the time to share all your experiences and memories.
Thank you.
So this is Marcy Stamper for Methow at Home with Betty Wagoner.
I really appreciate Methow at Home, too. They've really helped me. I appreciate them very much.
Yeah, it's a great organization.
Don't fence me in, oh, turn me loose. Let me straddle my old saddle underneath the Texas sky. On my cayuse, let me wander over yonder till I see the mountain high. I wanna ride to the ridge where the west commences, gaze at the moon until I lose my senses. Can't look at hobbles and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me.